Hello and welcome back to Money Power Health with me, Nason Mani. As you know, on this podcast we explore the complex intersections between power, money and the health of populations. And today we're diving into a critical topic, the alcohol industry and its impact on health. Alcohol is more than just a product. It's a multi-billion-dollar global industry with immense power and influence, and increasingly with a reliance on new growth markets, on extending into a range of low and middle income countries. And to do that, it has to shape social norms around alcohol consumption and brands, particularly in young people. Joining me today to talk about this is Dr. Emeka Dumbili. Emeka is an assistant professor and an Astra Fellow in the School of Sociology at University College Dublin, and has previously held senior teaching and research positions at universities and research institutions in Germany, the UK, and Nigeria. His interests span alcohol and other drug use and the ways in which commercial actors shape norms around their consumption among young people, with a particular focus on Nigeria. He is a mentor on the WHO Scientific Research and Writing Mentorship Initiative towards diversity in research on alcohol control policies, and has himself broadened his writing beyond academic fora to outlets such as The Conversation and to developing policy briefs for policymakers to seek to carry some of these issues forward. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I certainly did. Emeka, hello and welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Nation. Thanks for having me.
But it's a great pleasure to be speaking to you today, having read and enjoyed your work for quite some time. So I hope you are ready to go in depth into quite a bit of it, because I'm a big fan. But before we do, I thought it might be good to ask you a little bit about your journey and how you first became interested in sociology.
Well, thanks very much, Nelson, and once again for having me. My journey to becoming a sociologist is, well, I wouldn't know whether to say it's coincidental, because it wasn't planned. Actually, after my secondary school, I decided to study mass communication in the Polytechnic in Nigeria. We have two different structures at the Polytechnic and the universities. Polytechnics take you 2 years. Then after the first 2 years, then you go for 1 year training. It's like intern. Then you come back and do the extra 2 years, or you decide to go into the university. So when I completed my 2-year program in mass communication, I decided to go into the university instead of coming back to the Polytechnic to conclude. So that was how the journey from mass communication to sociology began. So when I got into the university, I was actually admitted to study mass communication, but one way or the other, I had to change. And I changed because the sociology and mass communication and other disciplines are in the same faculty of social sciences in the university. So it was easy for me somehow to change. Actually wanted to change to political science, but political science didn't take me. So the only option was to change to sociology. And that was how I got into sociology. During my mass communication program, I forgot to mention that I did some 2 courses, 2 modules, that's what we call it courses in Nigeria, 2 modules in sociology. So that was how, so I knew little about the introductory sociology. So in the university, well, it wasn't like as if I don't know anything. So I had to change to sociology. And that was how the journey began. I completed sociology and anthropology as my first degree, and I went for masters. And so that's just a summary of my journey to sociology, yes.
And what was it about sociology ultimately that, I guess, captured you or interested you?
Sociology is a very interesting discipline indeed, because it's quite theoretical. It is, something you do that you just see it's practical. Although some people people that don't know about sociology, we not know that it's something that you breathe in and out. You see it's happening around you. Sociology, focuses on group. You see everyday interaction. You go out there, you see people. In fact, after the class, you may just be coming out from the class and you see what you studied, what you just discussed happening. Crimes are everywhere. Human beings we are not made to be in isolation. So as you interact, you see the consequences of interaction. It comes up. So sociology is everywhere. So this is just one of the things that I know impressed me about sociology, because you do it in the class, you come out of the class. Even in the class, you see it manifested several things. Different people with different characters doing whatever they do. So it's just there. So sociology is interesting indeed. These are the things that made me to become very much interested. I'm that type that I love. I wouldn't say I love theory so much. So because sociology is laden with theory, so these are things that impressed me.
Mm. Interesting. And I suppose it's clear from your work that that's then what you started to do. You started to pick away at what's lying underneath social interactions and cultural norms around
Yes.
you, especially around young people, right? In Nigeria. And I just wanted to ask how it was that you became interested in the research side of sociology, and what your first steps into that were.
Well, my research interest in what I do now began when I concluded my first degree. Well, I had to do a project on social interaction and conflict in Warri. There's a particular place in Nigeria then. It used to be very turbulent because of crisis. So I did, my project was on Warri crisis, and that was how I did first research on social conflict using Lewis Cosa's theory. And it was very good because that was the first time I had to go to the field to collect data, and something happened that made me to become very much interested. I was studying social conflict, distributing questionnaires, and then I went to one local government, and trouble started. They started fighting, and the war. I witnessed it firsthand, and I
Wow.
became so afraid. Oh, so this is justice. So what I was studying, it was as if they had to give me the opportunity to observe it physically. So indeed, so after my first degree, I had to go for masters. And that was how I took it up to do another aspect of sociology. This one, I became very much interested in medical sociology because of one of my lecturers who, during my undergraduate lecturers, we have one of these, one or two people that will so much impress you to become your significant figures, role models. So he impressed me so much, and I became very much interested in sociology, medical sociology, sociology of health and illness. But I wasn't opportune to do that aspect during my long essay, the project I mentioned. But during my master's, I knew where, this is what I want to do. So I did something on maternal mortality, being influenced because of I lost my mother through maternal mortality. So that was one of the things. But when I was concluding my master's program, my supervisor then advised me, because I did it in another university, not where I did my first degree, advised me that because of what happened to my mother, that if I continue doing the maternal mortality in my PhD, I may, this emotion may be attached to it, and so that I should just look for something else to do. And that was how I started seeking for admission to do my PhD abroad. And one day I went to the library because I was employed as a graduate assistant. So in the university, I already started I knew it was going to be research. And so I went to the library. I was searching the library, and one day I just saw a brochure. University in the UK, they often send brochures and their admission issues brochures and booklets to Nigerian universities. I don't know whether they do it all over the world, but I saw the one, I picked it. It was just, and I saw one one professor then interested in his sociology of mass communication, sociology of media. And I was like, "What? How do I connect our area of research to what I want to do?" And alcohol. That was how alcohol, young people's use of alcohol, and the media influence on that. That was how it just clicked. I feel it's divine. I wrote her an email, please look at what I want to do for my PhD. Would you like to supervise me? And she replied, good, I want how we supervise you. That was just one email. And yes, just add my name in your admissions. And that was how it happened. And I went on to do my PhD studying media and alcohol. So it was just, that was the beginning of my research into alcohol and other substances. So that's just the summary of my story.
Wow, that's amazing. So you actually came back to mass media like that
Yes,
initial course.
yes. That's what I often say. That what I thought I will never do again after my ND, I saw myself doing it even in my PhD, because my PhD is about 50% or even 60% in media and 40% other aspects of sociology, gender, and other areas. So that's just a summary. Indeed, I finally came back to sociology of the media.
It's funny. I remember speaking to a colleague who sort of half jokingly, he was saying that, media studies programs get a lot of criticism in the press, or they used to get a lot of criticism, like, oh, there are these programs like media studies and who cares about
Yes,
these, and not real degrees and stuff. And this colleague of mine half jokingly would say, I think that's actually a conspiracy by the media to avoid the criticism of media, because actually media studies is one of the most important things that we need to do. It's such a powerful influence on
indeed.
everything, right?
Everything. Yes, indeed. We can't avoid the media. Indeed, we can't. And it's, of course, and because of so many things the media do, that's what attracts the controversy and the criticism. Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I'd love to hear more about some of the research that you did in relation to the alcohol industry, and how you felt or observed it shaping culture in Nigeria, in the Nigerian context. Could you speak to that a little bit?
My research is what inspired me. One of the things that inspired me to begin to look at young people entirely is that I grew up in the village. I grew up in the village, not in the city. So in my village, there's it's not just my village in the southern part of Nigeria. In the north, let me just give a little history. In the north, it's dominated by Muslim, and of course, there are many ethnic groups. Nigeria has about more than 250 ethnic groups. So it's a multicultural, multi-religious entity. But in the north, it's dominated by the Muslims, and in the south, we have the mixture of a majority of Christians and other traditional worshippers. So in my own community and people around us, young people don't drink alcohol, because it's culturally believed that alcohol is, the intoxicant, and young people don't supposed to drink it because they wouldn't be able to control the effect, to manage the effect. I grew up seeing alcohol that way, but there's something that in my own culture also, as a young boy, tapping palm wine. Palm wine is tapped, it's a sap from palm tree, palm or raffia tree. There's this rite of passage that every boy is expected to do. You're supposed to climb the palm tree, cut the palm kernel or tap the palm wine, and when you return, you give it to your father. If your father is late, to maybe to your uncle, just the elder. They will in the evening. They will if his father is alive, he will call his kingsmen, call them together, and tell them that my son is now a man. It's like he's growing to a man. It's the rite of passage. They will drink and bless you. Bless you that you will, that is rite of passage, and it's very important. If you do it, you become like, if you do it before your elder brother, it's like you're gaining a right over him, more of like you're becoming a man than him. So it's something that we all look forward to doing. But young people, irrespective of this cultural stuff, you don't drink. You are not supposed to drink. It's for your father and other things and other elders that will drink. So after my secondary school, I went to this polytechnic I mentioned earlier on, and I saw, of course, young people used to drink, but it wasn't popular so much. But when I moved to the university, I discovered that almost every boy drinks, and drinks beer. And if you don't drink beer, it's as if you're an outcast. There's this ordering of those who drink and those who don't drink. Those who don't drink are you're novice. I don't know, even there's this vulgar words they use. They abuse you that you're not a man, you're not this and that.
Mm.
Obviously speaking, almost every boy in my class drank alcohol, and it
Mm.
was popular. Anything like any social gathering, you see people beer. And there's this popular beer in Nigeria called Star. It's produced by Henneken. It was, if you don't drink Henneken, if you don't drink, this Star, if you don't drink beer, it becomes another issue. So when it was time for me to study, I already knew that these are things that attracted my interest. Why is it that there's this dislocation between the culture where I grew up from and the culture of these two environments. I mean, the polytechnic and the university. What is actually the issue? And during my university days, there was this thing that happened. It used to happen. There's this, if you there's any social gathering, like any like freshers day, freshers no night, alcohol, I mean, used to be very, sumptuous. Everywhere is filled with alcohol, and you'll be wondering, and you see people drink and drink and drink. On my head, I used to think about what it's. These are young people like me. In my culture, you don't even drink at all, or if you want to drink, it must be secret. You don't. The others will not see
Yeah.
you. Well, here everyone wants to. If you don't drink, you drink. You see people carrying bottle of beer, dancing and doing all kinds of things. It was popular, extremely popular. So that was what attracted my interest. Then when I began the study, I began to research young people. I discovered the role of alcohol industry in all of this. That it is actually the availability, this acogenic environment, the availability, accessibility, and affordability of alcohol that is responsible for what the changing cultural norms and the norms regarding drinking. Because what they do is, it's good to do this little background that Nigeria don't have alcohol policies. There's no regulations in terms of alcohol. There's no law restricting people from buying or and selling alcohol. What we have in Nigeria is industry self-regulations, and you know very well that industries don't obey, alcohol industry don't obey the codes the acts they put forward. So alcohol is sold in the university. That's in the university. Normally, because of maybe problems in the past, most universities in Nigeria outlaw alcohol. You don't sell alcohol within the university premises. But in our eateries, in everywhere, you see branded fridges, branded, the eateries within the university. In fact, from my lecture theater to it's not just few the distance of it's quite close. I can remember there's a spot where we go to eat. Everywhere is filled with branded fridges, branded. The venue is designed by one alcohol company's logos and banners and other things. And there's this stiff competition between brewers in terms of promotions. So these are the things happening within the university premises. Then there's this thing that also happened in Nigeria, that once you locate a university here, private enterprises will come around it and build hostels because government don't provide enough hostels with nightclubs and restaurants, bars, and whatever. So the environment is just filled with things that we definitely encourage young people to drink. And once young people disengage, they're not with their parents, they're not with their guidance when they come into the new place with this new culture that is already there, being encouraged by alcohol industry. So there's no way out. If you don't take time, you are swayed. You must begin to drink. So these are the things that impressed me, and I've been studying how the industry they drives this move to change drinking culture, because in a society where there's high rate of abstention, people don't drink because of culture and religion. They are trying to change the norms, trying to change the narratives by buy two get one free, buy and win a car, or so much promotions that are very that will lure you to. I've interviewed people that will tell me when you buy one and you win something like a generator. Because of electricity outage, you win a generator, you win fridge, you win so many things. You win a trip by for holiday. Why wouldn't you want to do that? So these are the things that that have impressed me. That's one of the things I've been focusing on: the industry's role in the changing narratives and changing drinking cultures and drinking practices among young people.
Well, before we go on to some of the other research you've done, having done that kind of locally grounded qualitative research and having experienced it as a student first, and then asked questions about those norms, and then gone and worked in a very different cultural context, right? Like in a high income country. What are your reflections on like just the fundamental difference in understanding? Because obviously a lot of research on the alcohol industry, sadly, is concentrated on high income countries, right? Like,
Yes.
both in terms of policy influence and in terms of qualitative interviews and other types of research. Having, I guess, walked in both worlds,
Yes.
what can you tell us about what's different and unique about the development of alcohol culture in Nigeria, about what industry is doing in that context? Are the gloves really off? Is it very different to what you observe in Ireland?
Yeah, of course, I've lived in three high-income countries now: the UK, Germany, and also now in Ireland. What I have noticed is that, first of all, I have to say it clearly that our industry, what they do is they globalize their strategies. Whatever works in one context, they want to do, take it to another context to try and see whether it will work or not. And it's strategic because all the big companies in Nigeria are from the West. The Henneken, Guinness, and then now more recently the AB InBev. These are the three major players in Nigeria. Henneken came first, and first Henneken is part of the colonial history of Nigeria. And because it was, it's a long story indeed, but it was Henneken was the advisor, during the colonial rule. Let me just give a background. During the colonial rule, alcohol imports was contributed 60% or over 60% of colonial income, and Henneken was an advisor, advising the colonial the companies importing that. So when it was time to hand over to Nigeria, before then, the companies that were importing those alcohol to Nigeria decided to form the Nigerian breweries. Henneken became the advisor, and Henneken finally bought the brewery and became the owner. So that's just it. So this way, Guinness later joined in 1962. This happened in 1946. Guinness then joined. Nigeria got independence in 1960. So before the independence, Henneken had already, had a stronghold. So he understood the political changes that happened. So he positioned itself very well to play the politics. They understand the changing, the drinking culture, that these people don't drink. So what do we do to change the narratives? And that's what they've been doing to date. That in most of these societies in developing countries, women don't drink alcohol, not just because of religion, but ordinarily because of gendering of alcohol, which is part of what I've been doing. Why the narratives do. So what they do is that they import some of these strategies that they've tested in the West to Nigeria and other developing countries and test them. But because of so many things, for example, this thing that they've researched in the West, drinking determined drunkenness, the culture of intoxication by UK researchers, that it's happening in Nigeria currently. And what is driving it is the industry. If you drink, for example, when they focus on women, they said drinking makes you independent, makes you this and that and that. And so women are drinking. In 2014 stroke 2016, Henneken organized what I wrote a commentary on, what they called the Nigerian Beer Symposium. It was a one-day symposium, and the aim, I can quote directly, is that the Henneken said they wanted, the aim was to create awareness of the health and nutritional benefits of drinking beer. And it was publicized. They contracted professors, nutritionists from Europe and Nigeria to come and do the one day symposium. And it was, for 3 or 4 years, they did it consecutively, gathering people together, doing media publicity, post and pre and post events publicity, teaching people how to drink beer because it cures cancer. I'm quoting directly, because beer cures
Jeez.
cancer, and beer improves cardiovascular health. It reduces the incidence of kidney stone. And women, one of the resource persons, a woman the nutritionist, said that women should drink beer, that beer improves physical beauty, physical skin beauty. But these are things that, ordinarily, because I want to, bring it down to the context of Nigeria, this cannot happen in the West. because of laws, because of many non-governmental organizations will team up together and say, no, you can't do this. But because there's no policy, it's like people don't even care about it. So they have a leeway to do the lack of policies, lack of restrictions or whatever to do that in Nigeria. So in addition to the practices, the strategies that worked in the West that they import to Nigeria, they also devise other things, other strategies, being because of lack of restrictions. So to do those things, and these are the ways they change narratives. They are focusing on changing the narratives, especially it's becoming more and more aggressive currently because of in the last 20 years or thereabout, they've been somehow declining young people's drinking in the West. In the global north, many countries, there growing evidence that young people are drinking less or even abstaining totally from alcohol. So you know very well that the industry relies on hazardous drinking to make profits. So they have to look for it somewhere else. And they're focusing on Africa and Asia and maybe other part of the global south. So that's what they're doing in Nigeria currently. And they are succeeding because nobody cares about what they're doing. Last year, half of the year, the industry, one of these, I think Henneken also, one of them declared 50 billion profit. It's so massive. And when you hear the kind of, the profit, you ask yourself, who is drinking this? Well, we know who. The young people. Nigeria is made up of over 62% of people that are less than 25 years. And a country of 230 million people with 62% or more than 62% of young population, less than 25 years, you know very well that they're targeting young people and making them. My current recent research has shown that people start drinking even before 13 years, 11, 13 years. 11, 13 years. Many people I interviewed, 72 people, and the majority said they drank before 13 years. So that should tell you what is happening. These are the things that I can actually say now.
That is incredible. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean, there's just so much to digest in what you've just said. I mean, first of all, the ludicrous situation where we are, we see increasingly these calls to shift how we talk about global health, decolonize global health, and these kind of things are happening when global health is dominated by actors who are, for example, actively investing in Heineken.
Yes.
I mean, it strikes me that this is a perfect example of neo-colonialism, right? Like these companies based from the West are going in, extracting value at great cost, great social cost, to take back to their shareholders in the West.
Yes.
And it strikes me that the same organizations that will either partner with alcohol companies to engage in corporate social responsibility initiatives, or will invest in companies like Heineken and then donate to WHO on vaccination campaigns. It strikes me that these things can't be disconnected, right? Like the alcohol companies and their harms can't be disconnected from global health more broadly, right? And so it just seems really, this scale of harm and cultural influence is not a greater focus of study.
Yes, indeed. It has been on my, I've been thinking about it, having discussed my work in South Africa and, this few, my recent work. After presenting my work in South Africa, I began to, when I was preparing for that presentation, I dabbled into other aspects of corporate social responsibilities that I didn't know was going on. These companies are sometimes I don't even know whether they are 100 steps ahead of us, or whether they have the resources, they have the strategies, and because. So I discovered so many things. They're not just focusing on women. Now they are focusing on very younger people in Nigeria. I know they've been focusing on that before, but now it's focusing on younger people, and so many subtle ways they do that you don't even on the first value, think you can say it's harmless. After all, they are doing good. training young people in quotes to empower them to become entrepreneurs. And so of course, in a country with that kind of population with 62% of people less than 25 years and lack of employment, and you see someone who's going to give you $3,000 to start your business, definitely $3,000 is big money in Nigeria in terms of, so people will not want to, talk about the harms they do. And I know very well that alcohol industry is not for the Christmas, so they don't give things free. You
No.
don't. So I know very well. I'm just using that for the Christmas stuff. You don't give things free. It's not like you're giving me candy to eat and you say bye bye bye, have a good whatever. It's just using one hand to take, then using another one to do that. Like you mentioned, now that they extract everything from Nigeria, the kind of harm they've caused right from before the colonial era ended. If you read the history of Nigeria in terms of alcohol, you will be very angry with every company that is from the West in terms of these alcohol companies, because they sponsored the buying of, even before the buying of slaves and buying of people with alcohol in Nigeria. It happened, and it has continued to date. Now they're not buying in terms of using alcohol to exchange for human beings, but now they're using to destroy the lives of young people. Because what happens in Nigeria is extremely, the kind of profits they are extracting from the country is enormous, and these companies are creating problems, health problems in Nigeria, and the country don't have the capacity to handle the problems because there's no good infrastructure in terms of medical. So you're creating problems, getting the profits and going away. Just imagine organizing a symposium to tell people to drink that because it cures cancer. You can
It's
imagine that
incredible.
misinformation, and how many people will go drinking it. Where in a country where people don't have the resources to treat cancer, and you tell them that alcohol cures cancer, drinking Henneken cures cancer, people will go and try it. And so you're making profits, and we know very well that alcohol causes cancer. It doesn't cure cancer. But this is the way they presented it. And it went on for 4 days. In fact, the program is so annoying because politicians were there, including the Nobel laureate. The
Gosh.
Nobel laureate attended, and most Nigerians adore the man in terms of, because of he's only Nobel laureate we have in Nigeria, and many people, they invited people, the who is who in the country to attend those events. So they are attracting, getting our profits, exporting abroad, just like what Thomas Bebo and his colleagues, and the question they ask is alcohol industry doing well by doing good in quotes. It's just like, and of course, I know very well your work has impressed me and influenced my research a lot in terms of the dark nudges and all that things you guys, you and your colleagues wrote about. That's the way they do it. But in the West, while it is not that not exactly the way they do it in a country like Nigeria, is because there are laws and policies. They do everything, of course, to get profit, but they have boundaries. They have boundaries because people can raise alarm, people can cry out and do one or two things, then the government can. But in Nigeria, there's nothing like that happening. In 2020, WHO and the Ministry of Health, a unit in the Ministry of Health in Nigeria, drafted, called researchers and came together and drafted a core policy document. We think this is what we've been waiting for. Now we have to have something. But to date, it hasn't even been translated to anything. The industry, because we made sure that we distanced the industry from the process and they didn't intervene. But unfortunately, the industry has strategies and they were able to influence the Ministry of Health. The thing had got stopped. It wasn't translated to the ministry, to the National Assembly for debate, for whatever. And now they want to start all over again. The industry has already bought over the Ministry of Health. So these are the things that are happening. Of course, we know very well that this is the strategy they use everywhere in the world. But in a country where there's no law, there's nothing at all to draw a boundary, it becomes worse in those contests.
Both disheartening, but also so important to think about, particularly as I think sometimes we have this naive impression as researchers, and I especially say this to researchers who are listening, that, oh, all I have to do is do research to expose this or to show this, and then that will lead to policy, and the policy will lead to improvement. Like A plus
Yeah,
B
yes,
equals C.
yes,
But uh, first of all, that's never true, but especially in the context you're describing, it must be so difficult to do this kind of research and know and think to yourself, what's going to happen as a result of this research, right? When
yes, yes.
we are so far away from, I guess, evidence-based policy, managing these conflicts of interest more. I mean, what has your experience been of how your research is picked up, is considered either in public discourse or in policy discourse? And do you have any kind of rays of hope in that regard?
Well, at the initial time when I began the research, I discovered it wasn't making any impact in terms of it wasn't picked up by anyone. I was just doing publishing papers and presenting in conferences. But what I decided to do is like what you mentioned. I knew that if I do it out this way, most research in Nigeria is not used. It will only end in the library or whatever. So I decided to because of my mass communication background. I have friends that are working in the media, a number of my classmates, and they are big shots in the media. So I started working with them. I tried telling them that this is what I do, because they know I'm in the university, this is what I do. And I started writing. I have a number of things that I've written and interviews, including the blogs. So people interview me about my research. I tell them that's the practical implications and here and there. So that's what I've been able to do. So it became at least I know it's not something that many people will know, but people that read the media and especially the health aspect of the newspapers and whatever, we see the practical implications. I wouldn't write it the way I write articles for publications, to bring it down to the people. I began to write that way. In the conversation, I've also written a number of things that, people can read and they get people to know. And once I do my research, I try to, tell those, my media people, my media friends, please distribute, share it so that it's just for people to know the implication, to know the real, to get the value of what I do. So that's how, and I think it has worked for me. It's working for me because I've received a number of emails from the industry directly, either from people in their Lego, whatever, asking me one question or the other, and I completely ignore, I don't respond to those emails. Because, yes, I know very well that it's because they are seeing my research, they are seeing those things that people are, publishing. Somebody may point, look at what is happening, in this national media and national newspapers, and so they want to get my ideas or whatever. I don't respond to such emails. So I think that's one of the ways I've been able to, handle the challenges. Otherwise, it will not make sense that you're doing this without people to know about it. And I also volunteer when they, like in the religious sector, when they call me for anything to talk about my research, the implications to young people and whatever, I just do it freely, to make people know that's one of the easiest ways to bring it closer to the people that are concerned. Because the youth in particular, I have been I've led the number of youth organizations when I was younger, so I know how to handle youth. Once I have opportunity to, to present my work, even if it's how many minutes, whatever, a few minutes to these young people, I do it politely in such a way that they will be able to say, oh, so I don't even know that alcohol can do this or drug can do this or that. So that's one of the ways. Otherwise, it would have been very challenging to do, because I remember one of the lecturers that impressed me, someone that I would say influenced me to go into this. When he heard I was doing alcohol research, he was laughing. It's like, wasting your time. And I was almost discouraged then, but thank God I wasn't, because it was like, you're doing something. Everybody knows that alcohol is socially acceptable drugs in Nigeria, and it's something that we cannot do without. So why are you going into such a research? So it's like I failed from the beginning, but good. I didn't, I wasn't discouraged. I went on. So I can see that's the way. Regarding my, of course, there are many challenges, definitely, but that's one of the ways I've been able to, handle it. Otherwise, it would be so frustrating because the policies are not the ministry of the people that are supposed to use the research to influence policies or do one or two things may not necessarily use it because of the industry influence and other things that are happening there. But these ways I've just described now are some of the ways I do disseminate my findings.
That's wonderful to hear. And you mentioned before that you attended this conference in South Africa to share some of your findings, and you learned some more, you were saying, about these strategies in young people in particular. What was your experience of presenting your research at Global Alcohol Policy Conference with advocates, researchers from other settings? Do you feel that there are these kind of wider support and dissemination networks that you can link into? And could you maybe share about what other people's reactions were to your research when you presented it there?
It was an honor to do a plenary there, and 55 people from 55 countries with over 550 people, in the hall that day, including my greatest highs, not just researchers, policymakers were there, including people from the legislative houses in Africa. So there, the minister from South Africa also was part of it. And one of the things that impressed me is that one of the legislators that came in said this is very important. Our research, our presentations, the keynotes, that because when they sit in the chambers, they may not know the implications of what we do, and if you don't bring them closer, they may not be able to know. Most of them are novice. They don't even have any idea that alcohol can cause this or do that. So she encouraged researchers to always invite people, policymakers, people in the National House of Assemblies, as people, lawmakers, the language we use in Nigeria, lawmakers, to come to such conferences. They can hear the findings themselves and take it up from there. So it's just one of the things that impressed me so much. I presented my work, and of course, from my contest, the contest of Nigeria, and I could see the line between when I in my own plenary, there was this professor from London, and he, after my presentation, when he presented, one of his findings, one of his core messages is that even the government contributes to frustrating policy implementations. A government is one of the reasons why policies are not implemented. I'm paraphrasing his ideas, and I could link it back to what I mentioned, that a policy that was drafted, a policy document drafted, the Minister of Health is part of the government, frustrated the transmission to the legislator to debate and make it law. So because the industry has been able to buy over or influence the ministry. So the government is hindering the implementation of alcohol policy in Nigeria, directly or indirectly. And in fact, it dawned on me, yes, this is it. I actually made a comment when I was told to round off, about that this is what is happening in Nigeria. So that is one of the things. And, corporate social responsibilities, activities of the industry, it's everywhere in the world. And it's becoming, what I've learned, which is what I discussed before, it's becoming more aggressive. It's an indirect marketing strategy, which you know very well. It's becoming more aggressive in this global south. In Nigeria, if I take it as an example, and the reason it's not far-fetched from the fact that they want people to, forget about lack of policies, to think that industry is doing very well. Because, for example, Guinness is sponsoring farmers that produce what they use, their raw materials they use in the industry, and it's self-serving. Very well. Why not sponsor other farmers that are producing cassava and other things that you don't use? You're focusing on funding people that use your materials. That produce your raw materials, and you say you're doing good things. No, you are just paying people to do what to produce what you use. But for those farmers, they interview them and whatever, and the good comments, and the Guinness will post it to their website and say that the farmers said, and they are doing very well. And people read it and feel, oh, these companies are doing very well. But they are not doing any good because they are destroying lives. So they are becoming more aggressive in their corporate social responsibilities activities on one hand. And on the other hand, They are increasing their alcohol marketing strategies in different ways. We know very well that Asia and Africa, they have common. They are being focused on. From alcohol industry is focusing on these two contests. Not only these two contests, but because of what I discussed, the decline in young people's drinking in the global north. Of course, they have to make their profits and they have to focus somewhere else to do that.
Well, I'm conscious of time, and I just wanted to first of all commend you on the work that you're doing. I mean, I think it's really important and exciting, and actually, I wish this was a much bigger focus in global health. It strikes me that previous guest, Dr. Salma Abdallah, she did this meta-knowledge research, which looked at what global health research was in practice. So in definition is one thing, but in practice, what are the empiric papers about? And she found that really a lot of the empiric papers are focused on infectious diseases, and not these huge vectors of non-communicable disease, even though these are the biggest and growing causes of ill health globally. And not, it does, a lot of global health research she found didn't really focus on social determinants, never mind commercial determinants of health, Hopefully things like podcasting, your articles in The Conversation, this is part of your work in spreading this further. We like to end the podcast with some reflections that are more applicable to people just starting out in their careers. They could be students. They could be people contemplating a career change. I wanted to ask you for advice on being brave, quite honestly, because doing this kind of research in these kind of settings is not straightforward. Like you said, you're not just doing research that may annoy industry interests. You're doing research that parts of government actively are trying to undermine, right? I guess, what advice do you have for students starting out? Like, what is the value in doing that kind of research, and how do you make sure you do it well?
For anyone who is considering a career in research in terms of alcohol or other substance, other psychoactive substance use in contexts like Nigeria, first of all, you have to consider this issue of underlining the background, because there's a high rate of corruption and it affects everything we do in one way or the other. Going back to the Ministry of Health and the industry being lobbying and trying. So you have to know, first of all, you have to draw the line, make up your mind from the beginning that you will not be involved in anything that will be against the conflict of interest. That is one thing, because at the early stage, the industry will chase you. That's one thing, to try to get you on their side. I started receiving messages, whatever, from them when I was at my very early stage of my career. And anyone I don't understand, I ask people that are ahead of me. So one of the things I will advise is make sure you consider someone who's ahead of you to become your mentor from the beginning. And anything that is not clear to you, please seek advice before you take action. Because once you store your hand, let me use the language we use in Nigeria, once you store your hand, you won't be able to, to be bold enough to continue with your career. That's one thing you have to do. That's another one is you have to be persevere. You have to know that the environment, the structure in developing country, in particular in Nigeria and other African countries, it's not just it's not smooth sailing. There are so many hurdles you have to cross. You don't have enough fundings. You don't have enough support from anywhere. So you have to learn from the beginning that you need perseverance, even if you're not just perseverance, and you need to build a network rather around people that know, so that they can connect you to give you advice on how to get funding here and there. So aside from my PhD, the government has not funded anything from Nigeria, and I've been doing all my work focusing on Nigeria. So I've been getting my fundings from different places in the world, but still I have the interest in doing what I am doing. And that's the third advice. You don't think that what you're doing is not relevant. Even if nobody appreciates that what you're doing is relevant, you may not look at it as if it is relevant now, but as you continue, you will know that it is relevant. When people tell you that, oh, you meet people that say, oh, your work impressed me, or has helped me to do this or do that. Recently, as you go on with your career, you see you're receiving emails, or even receiving calls, and people meeting people personally, physically in conferences or anywhere at all. That say, oh, you are the one that we read your work and you have used it somewhere. You don't even know who is using your work. Anybody who is considering this kind of research should please know that at the beginning, there may be some challenges, but as you go on, time heals. You'll be able to see that those challenges are fading away. Be perseverance and have passion. That is passion. One of the things that will drive you is passion. Love what you're doing and do it very well.
That's fantastic, Emeka. Thank you so much. Honestly, I feel this is a conversation that could easily spiral off into 10 or 15 different papers, like going back in history, going back in society, going back in, colonial practices, neo-colonial practices, conflicts of interest, youth culture. It's been so enriching to me. And just like you said in your closing comments there, I'm thrilled to hear that any research we've done has been used by you in these contexts. That is motivating to me to keep doing research. So I hope we get to do some together someday. But in any case, thank you so much for your time, and take care.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nelson, for having me. I'm grateful. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Well, that's it for another episode of Money, Power, Health. Huge thanks to my guest, Emeka Dumbili. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did as well. I'll leave Charlie to read us out, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Take care.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider leaving a rating. It helps other people find it. The music in this podcast was by Daniel Manny. You can find more information about his music in the show notes. This announcement was read by the very talented Charlie Manny.